Hi and welcome to Mwalimu Kipepeo. My name is Jasmine Wambui and I am honored to be your host. Did you know that you can actually report cases of child abuse and abductions right from the comfort of your phone, anytime and anywhere? Well, whatever the case, this episode is catered for you as we take up our role of being responsible citizens. Listen in. Kidnapping has become rampant in our society today, and there are very many reasons why it has become a common occurrence. As we mark the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons today, we shall learn more on how kidnapping of children is considered as human trafficking, where people steal children with the intent to exploit the child themselves or through trade to someone who will abuse a child through slavery, forced labor, or sexual abuse. And you know what? Sometimes the biological parent is involved in these kidnappings. Our guest today is a person who directly deals with victims of kidnapping and trafficking of persons with the aim of rescuing them. Martha Sunda, who is the Executive Director of Childline Kenya, will help us learn from victims' experiences and turning their suggestions into concrete actions, which will lead to a more victim-centered and effective approach in combating these crimes. So listen in, and I hope you learn something out of whatever we're going to discuss. Karibu sana. Thank you, Martha, for joining us on this episode of Mwalimu Kipepeo. Thank you for also accepting to become a guest on this episode and giving us information on a very important topic. But before we go on, just let us know more about Childline Kenya. What is Childline Kenya and what is their mandate in our society?
Childline Kenya exists to stop child abuse, and we believe that this is not possible on our own, or no individual or entity can do this on their own. And so our backbone is partnerships. And so we work closely with the various partners to provide child protection services to children all over the country. One of our largest programs is the Child Helpline Service, which we manage in partnership with the government of Kenya through the Department of Children Services. So together with the government of Kenya, we have signed an MOU, and in this MOU, we have the leeway to work directly with the children officers all over the country to respond to the cases that are reported to us. So once we receive a case at the helpline, we link the child to the children officer nearest to them. So if, for example, the case is in Mombasa, then we don't have to leave the office to go to Mombasa. We would link the child to the children officer nearest to them in Mombasa, who will assess the situation and determine the needs of the child both in the immediate and long term. And they will also identify the child protection service providers within Mombasa who are able to provide these services to the child. And then they would also coordinate that these partners actually provide the service to the child. And in case there's need to adjust the case plan or to involve other partners perhaps, or engage the family differently or a little more, then they're able to determine that. Now at Childline Kenya, we have professional counselors and therapists who also provide that kind of service to the client. So even as the client is receiving other services, then they also have access to counseling services for free from the team that we have at Childline Kenya.
Please tell us how the Childline Kenya helpline number 116 works. So when you call, what happens?
At the helpline, we handle everything children, literally. So we have reports of violence and abuse against children. We have cases where a child needs counseling. And we also have a situation where a child needs information, or their family or someone else requires information around child protection. So we're able to provide that as well. Now, The cases of violence and abuse, majority of them that are reported are currently sexual abuse and child neglect and physical abuse. Those are the highest reported forms of abuse, almost consistently all the time. But other cases of violence and abuse that we handle are around child abduction, child abandonment, child labor, prostitution and trafficking, child marriage as well, FGM. We also have emotional abuse. So really just everything around a child. And sometimes children call us to sing songs or to recite poems or to share their excitement in life. So it's not all gloom. We also have times when we have fun with our clients. So they sing to us, we applaud them for that. And then we also remind them that in case they need to talk to someone, they can be free to call us anytime. So that's the upside. Sometimes, obviously, then from what I have already explained about our work, we also handle some very difficult cases of children who are in trouble. Some of them end up dying, but thank God most of them survive, and we thank God for that.
Please tell us what age group is most affected and where are they the ones being targeted?
Most of the children affected by abuse and violence are mostly below 10 years. Again, maybe because of their vulnerability in terms of age and capacity to make decisions for themselves or to defend themselves as well. But you'll find there are certain forms of abuse that are particular to a certain gender. So you'll find, for example, there are more girls who are sexually abused than boys. And you will find there are more boys who are neglected or physically abused compared to girls. So those are the numbers and what they say about the child protection situation in the country, at least from the helpline's perspective and the data that we have.
So what cases do you mostly receive and how long is the process to successfully complete one case?
Resolving a case really depends on the issue that is presented and other factors around that case. So resolving a case might take a day and you're done with that case, but it can also take years, especially when the case has gone to court, and therefore all the witnesses need to give their testimony and then the court needs to determine the next steps. Sometimes the perpetrator has not been caught, so they remain at large, and that case therefore remains open for as long as they haven't been caught. But meanwhile, the child can access counseling and therapy and the rest of the family as well, and they're able to continue their lives, although the fact that the perpetrator has not been dealt with remains a risk, really. So such cases remain open in that sense then.
What are the current statistics of child abductions in Kenya today?
Now, on abductions, we have 407 cases that were reported to the helpline between February 2020 and now in July 2021. These are cases of children who have gone missing. Either they were abducted or they were kidnapped, or it wasn't clear at the point of reporting whether they had been abducted or kidnapped, but they have remained missing. So many of these cases are children below 5 years. Again, I think perhaps of their age, which makes them more vulnerable than other children, and that, as I said earlier, they have limited capacity to defend themselves. And or because also that the people who abduct or kidnap them have are either known to them, so they don't see the threat when this person calls them or takes them in and takes them away, or they have been lured with something that they like sweets or some stories that make them feel comfortable with this person, and so they are easily taken away from their home or from a place of safety.
What can parents and children do to avoid kidnappings and abductions?
Okay, so what can we do to prevent or to avoid kidnappings and abductions? I think they're just some of the tips really of what we can do. And sometimes you can feel like you have done everything and it still happens. Times are changing, tactics are changing, so you can't really beat yourself too much about it. But there are things that you can do to prevent it from happening or to at least reduce the incidences. One, it is important to know all the time, as much as possible, where your child is and with whom. Okay, just so that you can keep checking that they're all right. So even if they're playing out there, it's good to keep checking every so often whether they're still where you expect them to be, so that you're not caught out unawares. Two, agree with the school or the church about who will pick the child, so that it's not just everybody coming to pick your child. They might be picked by someone who has ill intentions, and that will not be a good thing. Then also, we need to prepare our children or instill in them values around engaging with strangers, asking for permission before they leave the house, such things that help you know that they left at this time, they left with so-and-so, this is where they went, and things like that. If they're engaging a stranger, tell them to say no, run away, teach them to run away from the stranger and to talk to someone trusted about it, things like that. And also, if you're able to, and if the child is of good age, so to speak, they are able to understand, it is good to also teach them some basic defense mechanisms or skills, like screaming, screaming and just throwing their hands around. It might scare the person away and they will stop whatever it is they had intended to do. Or at least it will call attention for someone to come to the child's rescue. So such things are some of the things that we can do to help our children. Teach them 116, for example, so that in case they're abducted and they find a chance to call, they can call 116, or they can call your number if they're able to memorize your number, and that way then they can seek help. So all these are just tips that we can give. We can't say 100% it will help, but it will reduce the cases of children going missing.
In the unfortunate event that a child is abducted, what can one do to expedite the process of recovery?
If unfortunately a child is abducted or kidnapped, I think the best thing to do is report immediately. Report to the police or to the helpline or to Missing Child Kenya. Report it to any authority that would take action. That might be the difference between life and death. So that is important, even as you continue to search. Two, it is critical that you cooperate with the authorities, so that if they ask you for photos of a child, for example, give it. If they ask you for details of where the child had gone, please give that information, so that they are able to make a decision, plan the next step of action, and do that. And then, even as a child protection practitioner, I'm also Christian. So pray, pray, pray. Whatever faith you belong to, let's pray, It's important that we also find hope in our, in the higher being, God, at this time, because it can be very difficult. And then it is also very important to seek counseling for you as a parent and for the rest of the family, because you are affected. Just the fact that your person is not with you, you don't know where they are, that can cause untold trauma. So it is important to seek help for yourselves to be able to handle that difficult period, and to also be prepared for when the child or the person who got lost is found.
How do you debrief as counselors who have to constantly receive distress calls from children?
Counselors at the helpline, and especially because we handle very traumatizing situations or cases at some point, we have daily debriefing sessions where we just sit and talk about the cases we're handling, the challenges that are in there. If someone needs psychosocial support, then they get it. But on a monthly basis also, we have a mandatory supervision, which is actually counseling for the counselor to be able to deal with their psychological, emotional issues so that they are ready to support their clients again. And so we do that in groups, and we are supported by a superior counselor who is someone not within us, someone outsourced, to be able to objectively help us with our situation as counselors.
Please inform our listeners how they can find you in case they need to know more about your organization and how they can handle child abuse in their own confines.
We are reachable on 116. You call 116 for free anytime. You can also chat with us on our website at www.childlinekenya.co.ke. We're also on Facebook, Child Helpline 116 Kenya or Childline Kenya. You can also find us on Twitter at Childline Kenya. We have a WhatsApp number. We have two numbers actually. One is 0722 116 116, and we also have 0701 116 116. You can send us an email on 116@childlinekenya.co.ke. Child protection is for everybody, so please feel free to talk to us. We can help you figure it out. We can help you to deal with the situation as well.
July 30th, 2006 was a day that marked the first multi-party elections to take place in the Democratic Republic of Congo in over 40 years. The elections went relatively smoothly, but there were a few incidents reported here and there. There were 32 presidential candidates, many of whom were former leaders of armed factions. The elections were held and monitored by the United Nations in an attempt to end an ongoing civil war in the country. Now you know. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like our Facebook page, Mwalimu Kipepeo, so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Please rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are leaving having learned something new. I'm your host, Jasmine Wamboi. Until next time, take care and God bless.